Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today, I have Ronny Young, the founder of Polymath Visuals, a creative studio focused on CGI on the Polymath podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Dustin, for having me. I'm super excited.
Hello, and welcome to the Polymath podcast interviews and discussions. This is going to be awesome. I actually found you I was searching for Polymath, just the random term for that. And I came up across your company there. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I kind of want to go into how that kind of came about, that kind of thing. We're here to talk about entrepreneurship, the creative industry, and overall just having a passion for authenticity and fairness. So what are those kind of traits to you in your life, do you think?
Yeah, so this is, I don't know, one of the big points of my life, I guess I like to strive for is the idea of fairness. And I've had some people call that childish, which maybe it is. But, life can be difficult enough by itself, right? I think we as just humans have the capacity to help one another and do whatever we can, whatever's in your power to, just try to make things a little bit of a level playing field. I don't know, just to make life better for everyone. I guess it just bothers me, right, when certain people take advantage of other people.
Yeah.
So I have very much, have been motivated by that. And that's kind of why I own my own thing now. You kind of take your own destiny into your own hands. And then, I've had freelancers, contractors, friends, people who do work for me. They actually say that's one of the things they really like about me and how I operate my business is that I'm very fast to pay. I don't wait 30 days. I don't wait 60 days, whatever it is. I just pay, almost as quickly as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I try to, make sure they're fairly compensated. If they put in extra hours, right? If they quote me a certain number and they put in extra work, I try to cover that, man. If I don't want to work for free, so I don't want my vendors to work for free either. So, I don't know. It's just this overarching idea of being fair is important to me. And I don't really know why. It just really is kind of a cornerstone of my personality, I think.
I love it. And it kind of reminds me of justice in a way. Like if something's unjustified, I'll get really upset about it. So I resonate with you with that fairness ideal. For example, one day I was getting food for my grandmother and my sister. And I went out to this place, we got the food. I came back, and one of our pretty big sides were missing. And I went back almost immediately because it wasn't the fact that I felt bad for missing that because I didn't check on the way out or the money was an issue, so to speak. It was the fact that since we spent money on that food, my grandmother spent the money on the food for the meal. I felt that it was she deserved to have that food. So I went all the way back to the restaurant to get it back because it's just fair to have that.
Yeah. And, hopefully, I'm sure no one at the restaurant did it on purpose. But yeah, you're right. You paid for goods and you should receive those goods.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same in the freelancer business world, right? It's like you can't ever go to like a car mechanic and say, hey, while you're changing my oil, can I have a free brake job? Like that just doesn't happen. You have to pay for what you get. So yeah.
So something I like to do to kind of break the ice, so to speak, on these shows is to share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
Okay. This might actually tie into the fairness thing a little bit. I was debating whether or not I should share this because it's kind of a weird aside, but so I was born with knees that dislocate. Both of them just pop out of socket just whenever they feel like it. It does suck. But as a kid, it happened a lot, right? Because you're running around playing. I was playing sports and stuff, and it would constantly happen. And it hurt like a bad word. I won't say it, but as I get older, I've kind of learned how to adapt to it and kind of make sure it doesn't happen. But in the sense of like being fairness, like I said, life can be hard on people for different reasons, and you may never know why. So this whole knee problem for me is probably one of the big reasons why I struggle for being fair to people, like whatever I can do to make life better for other people, I do. And it might be because of this knee problem. I don't know, but not many people know that about me.
I love it. And I think that is a good one. That's one reason why I like asking that question, because you get that kind of personal touch on the episode. And I also just love how it probably inspires you to be more fair in life, because you got dealt a bad hand. And so you want to make sure that you can do your parts at giving people a good hand.
Yeah, yeah, it's a funny timing actually. My left knee popped out of socket Saturday night, and it
Man.
was it was the first time it's dislocated in about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
My wife and I have been married for, I think we're coming up on 7 years, and it's the first time she's had to help me deal with it. It's the first time she's seen it happen. So I've got a pretty good handle on it. I can prevent it for the most part, but we did a lot of yard work this weekend, and I think my muscles were just tired, and it just went out.
Man. So pivoting to like the questions then a little bit, this might have also inspired your fairness and history might have inspired where you created Polymath. You're the founder of Polymath, a wide-ranging creative studio. What are some of the projects you're most proud of?
Yeah, so I'm a big car nut. I love automotive stuff. So we did an ExxonMobil piece, which is actually a much smaller piece of a larger video. So we only got to do the 3D portion. But that's basically explains how a turbocharger works. And I really, really enjoyed that one. And I'm going hard after like automotive clients, like Bill Stein, they do shock absorbers and stuff like that. But anything automotive in the portfolio, I'm proud of. I'm getting super excited about. Another one that recently happened was Blink here in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's maybe the largest city in the world that's doing this right now, or they're one of the largest, outdoor experiences, I guess you would call it. But it's essentially a light festival where I don't even remember. It was an obscene amount of projection mapping projects where so many buildings were lit up with different animators around the city, chiming in and creating content. So in addition to the lighting, the projection mapping, there were like installations and murals happening. Some of them were like painted murals with projection mapping on top of them. I mean, it was nuts. So that event lasts for 4 days, and it's always in October. I think they're going to try to do it every other year because it's a pretty big thing to pull off.
Yeah.
And it actually spanned 2 different states. So it was in Ohio and Cincinnati, and then in northern Kentucky in a city called Covington, which is actually where my office is located. But the reason that project was so important to me was because that was like the time I feel like we made it, right?
Yeah.
Like up to that point, I always just kind of felt like a freelancer that was doing okay. And when we got awarded a building to projection map on for Blink, I was like, oh yeah, it's
cool.
happening now. Like the business is real and people are taking notice. So that was big.
Well, I remember seeing that automotive video as well that you mentioned, the turbocharger of the car. It's interesting to see how the fans go into it. And as a computer geek, I built my computer. So it's one thing I've always been really fascinated by is PC airflow, which I think it kind of resonates with that same kind of turbocharger. You have to focus on the airflow where all the wind goes through, and you were able to visualize that in the video.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, not to get too in the weeds, but we use Xparticles for that. It's a really cool particle simulator for Cinema 4D. But yeah, you're right. You're just trying to visualize airflow, right? Like how do you do that? So it's a fun challenge. And I go ahead.
I was gonna say, feel free to go in the weeds or tangents. That's what I like about the show.
Yeah, Xparticles might be too in the weeds for your audience, but it's a really cool program. A lot of people use it, and some people actually specialize in it to the point where, these big studios like The Mill or Imaginary Forces out in LA or New York, right? These big studios, they will actually hire Xparticles specialists. I mean, dudes or girls are just sitting in a chair simulating particles all day long. And it is some of the coolest work out there. I mean, it is awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember seeing a video recently about snow and how snow is being developed because it's a particle system, but almost kind of like sand in a way, how they do it. And it's just crazy how much effort goes into that.
Yeah. You're actually kind of touching on like a scary point of this whole field, because I think there's always going to need to be a need for an artistic hand.
Mm-hmm.
But anymore, you have computer engineers, people who are able to write code, and, they're just able to do amazing things that we artists can't even do or struggle to do. I keep thinking about the movie Brave. I think that's Pixar, right? Or it's Pixar or Disney.
Yeah, one or two.
I read a story about, these software engineers or, programmers developed something that just generated moss. Like they just basically like looked at the north side of trees, like it would happen in the real world. And they were able to generate moss on trees and rocks. And they just had variables that you could play with and tweak. And it just, it just automates so much work. It's kind of like, am I going to be out of a job here in 10 or 20 years? I don't know.
Well, then I think there still needs to be that human touch. And one thing that keeps kind of coming to mind is the idea of making it feel realistic. And so, for example, just video games. There's a lot of systems like that where they have footprints in the snow. And I remember playing Skyrim on PC and being able to mod it up. And I like to mod it for days, 200 something plus mods. And one of the mods that I cannot live without is footprints in the snow. For some reason, it's not built into the game. But once you have it, you have to have it again. If you look down, you don't have footprints, it just feels wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I'm imagining they're doing that with some sort of displacement mapping or normal mapping technology. I don't know how they're pulling it off, but you have to send that to me. I'd be interested to see how they're pulling that off.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's attention to detail like that that really sets things off.
And a lot of the mods actually get often around that. So how did Polymath, the company, come about?
Yeah, so I had this, I said earlier, this desire to kind of take my own destiny into my own hands. And so I was really interested in freelance. I was working at an agency. I actually got a job offer to go to another agency with some more money. So I took it. But at the time, in that transition, I said, would you consider me as a freelancer instead? And they said, no, we just want a full-timer. So I said, okay, that's fine. Well, I was only there for like 5 months. And during that 5 months, I actually brought in, I'm just going to go ahead and say the number amount because I think it's interesting for people to hear this. I actually brought in like $50,000 worth of work with me. Yeah. Dang. So, my salary at this place was like, okay, maybe I won't say that number. I don't want to tick them off, but it wasn't a whole lot higher than that. I mean, I essentially brought in my salary within the first 5 months of being in this place. And I just sat there and I was like, what am I doing? I am making money for other people. I clearly have a potential to do this. So I talked to my wife and we said, you know what, let's try it before we have kids. Because, once kids enter the picture, I don't want to try freelance and then fail and you got a hungry kid sitting there. So it was just us. And I thought, all right, let's just try it, for 6 months. If it doesn't work in 6 months, I'll go get a job again somewhere. I felt pretty confident that I could get hired again somewhere. So we did. And that first year freelance, I basically doubled my income. It was insane. It was totally worth it.
You cut out the middleman.
Yeah, you really do cut out the middleman, and not only financially, but just project management, right? Because I'm the artist doing it, and I know what I'm talking about. I was able to streamline projects, and clients got things faster. They saved money. There were fewer revisions. It just made sense. Yeah. Like you literally cut out that agency, bureaucracy, right? So I had, it was such a good experience that I decided to turn it into an LLC. I'm actually an S Corp LLC. And I assembled my team pretty early on. I got a lawyer, a CPA, a financial advisor.
Interesting first choices there. That's good.
Yeah. I don't know who told me that, but somewhere early on, I either read a book or had some advice given to me, but they were like, one of the first things you should do is assemble your team. And I was like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, here's your team. Here's who you need if you're going to be a business owner. They're like, you need a good accountant or CPA. You need a lawyer. You probably even need a banker, which I don't have. I do not have a banker. I don't have a friend at a bank anywhere that helps me with loans. But I do have a financial advisor. So between the 3 people on my team, they've helped me so much. And you end up spending some more money, but man, how much time have I freed up because of their expertise, instead of me trying to figure it out on my own.
Exactly. So speaking of expertise and learning, like what have you learned from founding it?
Yeah. So the 3D world is so complex. There's a ton to learn there, right? You're never done. You could constantly learn something new in the 3D world, I feel like. But what I think I'm most excited about learning and learning more is the business end of things. This idea of, artists don't make good business owners or business leaders bothers me, and I want to prove it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I want
Interdisciplinary.
to, yeah, I want to take that and just show the world that artists can be good business leaders. And in the spirit of that, I keep dragging my feet, but I want to start a YouTube channel and basically help other artists or explain my story, so maybe I can help give advice on how to be successful as a creative person, and still make enough money to live and hopefully even thrive on.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. You could do something like we're doing here, do some interviews and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've thought about it. The softbox I'm currently using just came in the mail, so I actually have my kit together. I've got a good camera, some lighting, so that all just came this past week. So it's time to do it. It's time to start.
I actually was watching a video about a kid he's like a little bit younger than me, honestly, who stopped working at DreamWorks. He worked there for about like a year, a couple of
Oh,
years,
that
something
would
like
be
that.
great.
Yeah, and I guess they have this whole system of education where almost all the projects they've ever worked on, they have a backlog. And so you can actually go in and look at every step of the process and how
Whoa.
certain characters were developed, certain like scenes were made at different formats of the timeline. So different people doing the storyboard or the animation cycles and that kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
they encourage you to go and learn and get mentorship from peers and stuff like that. He was actually talking about how he didn't get enough mentorship, or when he did, he didn't take advantage of it. But it was interesting how that core company dynamic worked.
Yeah, it's I feel like unless you just sacrifice sleep, you can't learn at all. So you really kind of have to start to become choosy. And I imagine, roughly in people's 30s, they have to make the decision. Do you want to be more of a manager and, teach younger people who are coming up how to do it and start becoming more of a director? Or do you want to continue doing it for the rest of your life, right? Like, do I want to keep animating those walk cycles until I'm 60 years old?
Well, it seems like there's a dichotomy there that it almost needs to be split up a little bit too, because teaching others is still part of the learning process. A lot of the
Yeah.
time, you can learn a lot more by teaching to someone else. And
Yes.
it is interesting to think about too that regardless if you're managing or doing the actual creative work itself, those are just two pathways throughout the career path, but they aren't necessarily part of the teaching path. You know what I mean? You might teach more as a manager, but you won't necessarily have to stop doing it.
Yeah. There's, a pretty well-known dude in our circle, our field, called the Grayscale Gorilla, and his name is Nick Campbell. His company is probably 10-ish years old, maybe a little older. But he kind of just got started in the Cinema 4D days when it wasn't as popular as it is now, doing tutorials. And now he's, his company's huge. Everyone knows who he is. He has a subscription-based model where they sell, tutorials and assets for 3D people. He's doing great. He's growing like crazy. His social presence is, huge. He's doing it right. I don't know if he's got a business coach, but it seems like he's on fire. He's reading books or something because he's doing it right.
Maybe I should have him on too.
That would be great. Yeah. Shoot, man, get us both on. I need to meet him.
Maybe we'll have a 3-way interview conversation, something like that.
Man,
So,
that'd be awesome.
yeah. What are the next steps towards your own or your company's future?
Yeah, so 2020 was supposed to be the year of growth. We were going to hire this year. Last year was really good, our best year yet. And I thought, okay, we're doing it. I'm bringing on a full-time 3D artist. I'm going to let them take over more of what I'm doing so I can focus a little more on sales. And then a coronavirus hit, right? So kind of hit the brakes on that. But it is still an aspiration for me. I want to do it. Maybe not this year. I kind of want to see how this year plays out. I'm being a little safe. I'm sure everyone is. But next step for me and for Polymath is definitely hiring. In addition to that, I am bringing on a new partner this year. That will happen this year. That's pretty much a done deal. We just have to hammer out some of the details. He is going to start in August.
It's exciting.
Yeah, and his name's TJ Bitter. He has his own video production company. So he's going to bring a whole new department to Polymath. I'm already offering video. I could do some video on my own anyway. But with his help, we're just hopefully going to keep growing this thing. So he's going to manage the whole video portion of the business. I'll keep on the 3D CGI, animation sort of into things. And then the two of us hopefully will just kill it.
Yeah, get a dynamic duo. So kind of going off a little bit, what are some of the reasons you named it Polymath?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the non-sexy version first, and then I'll tell you the sexy version afterward.
Okay.
So the dumb, crude reasoning is poly, because we deal with polygons in the 3D world. So that fits. And then math, right? We're constantly doing stuff with math. Like we'll write our own scripts or our own, Python or something like that. So we do a little bit of scripting, and most of it's based on math. So when I found the word, I literally just stumbled across this word one day looking at like news headlines. Had never heard it before in my life. I thought, oh, what's a polymath? That's kind of fitting, right?
Yeah.
And then that started me down this trail of Leonardo da Vinci, like he's a pretty famous polymath. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. Like once I found the word and I looked up the definition, I thought there's not a better name for this company.
Yeah.
Well,
it's interesting.
Go ahead.
I was just saying it's interesting that you bring up math. A lot of times when people see polymath and they think, oh, what is that about, mathematics or something like that? But it's more generic than that, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So it's basically just a person who has learned much, right? Or I'm not verbatim quoting Merriam-Webster here, but it's the idea that many things in many different fields.
Yeah.
And so here's to me the sexy version of really why I like the name. To be a 3D artist, you have to know lighting like a photographer. You have to know dynamics and physics like a scientist or a mathematician, because
definitely,
how does a heavy bowling ball fall and bounce versus like a very lightweight balloon, right? So you have to observe nature and how things actually happen. You have to learn how to model things. You're almost like a construction worker or a contractor because you have to build things. You have to build 3D models. Let's see, you have to be an animator. That's a whole nother skill. You have to learn timing and pace. It's just so many hats that you have to wear to be a 3D artist these days. And I don't know, to me, it's super complicated and complex, but it's fun at the same time. So I thought, shoot, polymath, that's perfect. You have to be a polymath to be a 3D artist.
I agree.
And now we're talking about video, bringing video on, doing more and more of that. And that brings its own realm of things.
Managing.
Yeah. Like we were talking about, being a business owner and proving, that artists can be business owners. It's like, man, there's another hat you have to wear. You have to at least learn a little bit of finances. And, I'm not a tax guru, but I've learned enough to do this right. So, the name just fits. It really fits well, I think.
And I think that's why I wanted to reach out to you too. So I could kind of see that. And when I see polymath, I don't just necessarily see the generic term. I see like what kind of person is doing all these interdisciplinary skills and how did they learn it? How have they learned it? What are they trying to do with that knowledge, and what knowledge do they employ? And so like you're saying, the animation, the management, the overall creative skills and physics, all that kind of stuff comes together in a unique way. And I think that's really the key of polymathy, to me at least, is the coming together, so to speak. So something I ask each of my guests is, what is a polymath to you?
Yeah. So I mean, it's to me, it's the Leonardo da Vinci's, right? You don't have to be an artist, but you should be, to be a polymath, you should be well versed or at least interested in multiple fields, right? So, I don't really have much of an interest in poetry, but like maybe someone else does. And at the same time, maybe they like gardening or they like writing or, like I'm into cars, right? It's this idea that you're interested in, you have passion for multiple things that are not related. And like you just said, it's that culmination, it's that sum of everything that makes you a polymath. And I think they're the most interesting people, right? You,
Right.
you could find a specialist, someone that just knows a lot about one thing. And that's great. You know, they're probably smarter than me for sure. But some of the most interesting people I meet can just do almost anything.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too that even a lot of specialists need to have the wide width of knowledge to really be successful in their field. So someone I'm trying to talk to is a quantum computing specialist, and she has to talk about quantum computing, physics, overall computer science, all these different areas that come together into that one career path. So even though she's a specialist, she's also kind of polymathic. And when I saw you too, I thought that same kind of deal where there's a lot of areas in your life that you're very polymathic. And I think that's one reason why I have guests like you on the show, where I get to meet all these interesting people.
Yeah, it's, you know, I feel like I almost cheated, right? Because if you Google search polymath, I feel like Leonardo da Vinci is like one of the first things that pops up. But I feel like I cheated because I grew up as an artist. You know, I was the kid that would always draw. And for me, the art portion came easy, right? I just fell into that. I got lucky. But as I get older, I'm starting to learn other things and have an appreciation for other things. So yeah, I guess I say that to say that you don't have to be an artist to be a polymath. But to pick up an artist skill late in life is probably harder for people. It's certainly doable, but I don't know. Maybe I'm making a generalization here, but I feel like most people who are artists are probably started young.
No, I agree, and I think that a lot of the great polymaths, like Elon Musk, even, and Leonardo da Vinci, of course, and all these people, they often have artistic, somewhat in some shape or form, invention or painting or some kind of creative endeavor. And your kind of philosophy in life is fairness. For me, it's balance, and oftentimes comes down from the balance of philosophy and science. And so having that artistic and the hard kind of knowledge, so to speak. So wisdom and knowledge. And so I think that is a very key point there. A lot of them have that artistic or philosophical area.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about your point of view on these things too, because I think we're probably very similar in that way. I took a philosophy class in college, and it really opened up my mind.
Definitely.
I definitely was one of those kids that grew up in a Christian home, and I am probably far from being a Christian anymore. Yeah. So that's a whole other topic.
We can go into another episode or something like that. It is interesting how philosophy is often confused with religion. A lot of religions have a deep philosophical embedding, but you don't have to believe in a religion to study from it. So if I wanted to read the Quran, but I grew up like Protestant or something like that, you don't have to believe in Islam to learn the philosophies. Ironically, they're pretty similar in nature when you actually look at the kind of big picture. But a lot of times, like Buddhism, for example, it's not a religion. It's a philosophy, belief system that you can apply to anything, including other religions if you want to. Even the Dalai Lama himself has talked about how Buddhism is just kind of a thing you can tack on and have it as a compassion generator almost in a way in your life.
Huh.
Yeah. So one thing I also wanted to ask you about is what kind of car do you drive? You've mentioned cars quite a lot. I'm curious.
Yeah. So for the past 10 plus years, I've had a Scion TC. It's a little 2-door car, 4-cylinder. It's been fun, pretty good on gas. But I bought that years ago because my dad worked for Toyota, and Scion was made by Toyota, so I got a pretty good deal on it. But I actually just bought a brand new Toyota Tacoma. So I'm a family man now, right?
Yeah.
We have one kid with another one on the way. You know, we have a house, we have yard work to do, chores and landscape. You know, it was time for me to buy a truck. Growing up, I hated trucks. I never wanted one. But now I find myself in need of some more utility out of my car. So selling the Scion right now. It's for sale. I think I'm actually interested. Yeah. I think I have a buyer actually already. He was hoping to meet tomorrow, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, I bought a Toyota Tacoma. I'm loving it. The gas mileage is horrible. I feel terrible about that. I really wanted a Tesla Model Y.
Yeah.
But you know, those things are like 60 grand, and
it's about the investment. It'll make over in years' time.
It totally would. You're right. I would make it back in gas savings for sure. I think the thing that pushed me over the edge was the utility of a truck bed.
Hmm.
Like I mentioned landscaping this past weekend, I was on vacation. So I went and got a few truckloads of mulch, and we did our landscaping beds ourselves instead of hiring someone else to do it.
That's
And
good.
it was just nice to not have to rely on anyone else to help me. I could just do it myself.
I think that's also kind of the polymathic approach as well, being able to either learn the skill or go out of your way to find out what you need to do in order to do it.
Yeah, and not to get too morbid, but anytime I would need a truck, I'd have to call my dad, right? And I just got to the point where I was like, my dad's not going to be around forever. He's still, he's 62. He'll be 63 in August, but hopefully he's got quite a few more years ahead of him. But
Yeah.
he's slowing down. He can't do as much anymore. I feel bad bothering him. And yeah, on the note of being a polymath, I want to do more of it on my own.
It reminds me of Ralph Waldo Emerson's self-reliance book, and it's just being able to take something up on your own, take something up on your own.
Yeah. 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 And yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not above asking for help when I need it, but if I can do something by myself, I will do it. And, a lot of times it's because I feel like my standards are probably higher than most other people. So you have that trust issue too, right? Like if you hire someone to do something, are they going to do as good a job as you would do? Because, I actually care about my house, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a little more time to do it right. But yes, you're right.
Well, and kind of pivoting a little bit too, I was wanting to talk to you about your new logo in a way. It has a modern elegance appeal to it. And so how do you think that expresses the polymathic mindset or at least your brand's mindset if they aren't one and the same?
Yeah, yeah. So the new logo is it's really cool. It's actually an evolution of the first logo that I had created. I don't know if you've seen the old logo, but the old logo is essentially the old logo was more of it was basically the golden mean
Hmm.
represented in a equilateral triangle. So the golden mean, the golden ratio is this whole proportion idea from the Renaissance, right? It's this idea, and I forget the relationship. It's like 1 to 1.5 with a bunch of fractions. But it's this beauty identifier. In the Renaissance, artists used this to say, this was nature's perfect ratio. If you look at a nautilus shell, the spiral on a nautilus shell is the golden mean. Flowers supposedly have it. You can find it almost anywhere in nature. So they really harped on this idea of the golden mean or the golden ratio. So I looked up a triangle version represented by that ratio, and I actually cheated. I squished it down to be an equilateral version of it just because it looked better as a logo. So what this company, and I'll give them a little plug here, Christopher and May, they're a design company out of Dayton, Ohio, and I know the owner and one of his employees that used to work with her. They helped me out with this logo transition, and they refreshed it for me, and I thought they did a knockout job.
Yeah.
So one of the more obvious things, but it's kind of hidden. If you flip the logo upside down, there is a hidden V and a P. So for Polymath Visuals,
I see that now.
yeah, it's a little hidden. But the reason the triangle's pointing up is because we want to constantly have a positive mindset and a positive attitude. We want to be focused on things like growth, just being a very positive partner for our clients.
Mhm.
And that's one of the important words for us as partner. So everything's just good, right? We want everything to be pointing upward and onward. But really, one of the cooler relationships in the logo is there's a smaller triangle within the larger triangle, and this is a representation of the golden ratio, the golden
Right.
mean. So that smaller triangle is relation to the larger one is the golden ratio. It also represents mentorship. So this idea of, bringing on employees and training them or helping them grow, whether they stay with us long time or if they decide to move away and work for someone else, this idea of helping, could be an intern, could be an employee, whoever, just students in general, maybe, but helping people grow and learn. So you've got the little triangle there representing them, and then hopefully the bigger triangle's me or TJ coming on. But yeah, it's this idea of growth, mentorship. It's just, there's a few things in there kind of hidden that I was just in love with.
Right. That is crazy too. I love how we can get in these like productive tangents into like, 'cause I knew that question was going to spark something. I didn't think it was going to be that fascinating too, no less. Not that I had any doubts, but it's interesting too. Just the golden ratio and Fibonacci sequence is another one that people talk about quite a bit.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of that. I didn't know there was a V and a P in that logo. If you flip it, that's interesting.
Yeah. So you flip it upside down, there's a V and a P. And another reason why I kind of want to hide that is I still struggle with, are we Polymath or are we Polymath Visuals? The only reason Polymath Visuals is even a contender is because that was the URL available. Polymath.com was already taken by, I think, some like cryptocurrency or I forget who they are. I did finally get a hold of polymath.tv, so I might switch the company over to polymath.tv. A lot of people in our industry use that URL .tv.
That is interesting. Well, and then also too, the whole like SEO aspect of it, where if you search Polymath, you're going to get the cryptocurrency, you're going to get some of my content actually, ironically, and you're going to get a lot of your visual stuff too. So I almost wonder if that would be too crowded of a name.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, John and Candy, the people we're mentioning earlier at Christopher and May, the design company that helped me with the logo rebrand, refresh, that was their advice, right? They said, you need to keep the Polymath Visuals name together because it ranks higher, right? If someone searches Polymath, like you said, a bunch of things are going to come up. Polymath Visuals, it's just me. And it still works, you know, legally the entity is called Polymath LLC. It doesn't matter what we call it publicly. I don't think there's any issue there. The only weirdness might be, you know, we can sometimes do things outside of the visual realm. Like if we work on audio, for example, like maybe it's just an audio project.
Right.
You know, technically, I guess that's out of visuals.
What about Polymath V? Like a big V.
Polymath V, just Polymath V.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. I'm excited to bring TJ on board, the new partner, because he's going to have some insight into how to grow the business too and what he wants to see out of it. So that's another perk there, you know, having another mind to bounce things off of, and I'm not trapped in a silo by myself. Yeah,
definitely having that interpersonal connection and ideas. So also kind of pivoting once again here is you've helped a video game startup company for the project Captain Patch. So how did that feel?
Captain Patch was a great experience, but it was kind of a funny experience. So it was pretty early on in my career. I didn't have a bunch of 3D chops at that point. So that was tapping into more of my illustrator background because I grew up, you know, drawing. So I got to do a lot of illustration work for them and some 2D animation. The company unfortunately folded before they finished the game. Oh, no. So we didn't actually get a working prototype. But man, yeah, it was exciting. I loved it. Just concepting and developing the illustration style and the characters based on what the actual programmers wanted to see was super fun and exciting. And then animating was fun. But it just never came to fruition. We did do other video games beside Captain Patch that actually were released on the App Store, maybe on Android. I know for sure on iOS in the early days. You probably can't find them anymore.
Oh no, you have to send me a link, see if we can, or whatnot. We'll talk about it later. What is it like to work for that video game development as a kind of visual creator for yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty hectic. In my experience, you know, video game companies, little startups, you know, they need a lot of help. They're asking for the moon, and they don't have a budget to speak of.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it for funsies or, you know, it's a passion of yours, don't do it because it's a lot of work, but it is fun. So you're not going to make a lot of money, but you are going to have a lot of fun. And if it gets released, I don't know if you could structure like an arrangement to make royalties or something, or a small percentage of sales. That would be the way to go,
Yeah.
because these small companies don't have big budgets.
And sometimes they blow up too, like Celeste and whatnot.
Yeah. Sometimes they just go under, the
Oh, that's
guys,
true.
yeah, they just spend years developing this, and it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. It just never gets released. And then all that time and money and effort is just
Yeah.
gone.
Well, and it's interesting. I don't talk about it too much, but my hobby on the side is spriting, which is 2D character design for video games like
Yeah.
Pokemon or Zelda or whatever. And it's interesting just how one point I held a game called Slippery Monkey, designed some of the sprites and backgrounds just for fun. I wasn't looking for any payment or something like that, but it was just kind of a fun little endeavor.
Yeah. But it's funny you kind of found the Captain Patch thing, because it's pretty old. But I do remember it being a good exercise in how do we make something as exciting as possible with as little content as possible.
Right.
So like, it's literally just like a pirate flag with their logo and like a couple shadowy figures. It's like, you don't have a lot to work with. There's not a lot of content yet, but you're trying to build up this excitement for this game. It may have been planned for Kickstarter. I think that's what it was. They were trying to release it on Kickstarter and get funding, and I don't think they ever got the funding.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah, there's a lot of failed projects on there. And it's kind of funny how you mentioned how the game was really hidden back. I often try to do these deep dives when it comes to the research. I try to find things that people never talk about or haven't talked about in quite a while to get that.
Yeah. Well, when you create like a demo reel, right? You usually want to use your latest and greatest work, but it is sometimes fun to just dive deep into the files, the archives, and find like old work and be like, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And sometimes you find something you'll put in there anyway, because you're so proud of it or so happy with it.
Well, and sometimes your old ideas can influence new ones too.
Yeah.
Do you have any old projects that influence your new ideas now?
Right now it's probably pretty video focused. When I worked at Traction, the company is also no longer around. They were a smaller studio of like 10 of us. I got to be a polymath there even before I knew what the word is. And that's where I got to make Captain Patch. And I also did some video work back then. So I think when you dug up Captain Patch, it reminded me to go back and look at some of my work from Traction. And yeah, we did, just some fun pieces. There are some arts organizations in Cincinnati called Arts Wave. I'm blanking on the other one, but anyway, we would make videos for them, and they were fun projects. You get to go out and interview kids. It could be students, because they would do murals on the sides of buildings, and they would use college kids or high school kids. So we'd get to interview those people.
That's cool.
Yeah, we would do weird things like stop motion, or like a time lapse of the sun coming up and setting on a building with a mural on it. So your camera is literally set up for 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's just taking a picture every 10 minutes or whatever. Yeah.
That's crazy. And it's just interesting how creative you can get with some of those smaller time projects too, because you're limited. It's almost like MacGyver in a way to make it really seem really, really cool.
Yeah. And maybe Traction prepared me for this, because Captain Patch was similar, where you have a bucket of assets and they're not the greatest, right? Like the arts organizations usually have a footage library that they just own. And you're like a cook, you're like a chef. Like here's your ingredients, make the best thing possible out of this. Yeah. It's a fun challenge for sure.
Definitely. And considering that when TJ comes on, he's going to be able to help you with some of the videos, and you have the CGI, and you even mentioned earlier about the audio, do you think that you might expand later down the line to other areas? Do you see that might be some kind of challenge, something like that?
Yeah. So my background is actually in graphic design. I have a BFA in graphic design from Northern Kentucky University. So from time to time, I'll just do normal Photoshop work, Illustrator work for clients. And we're actually getting more and more web requests. It could be anything from designing the actual website to an animation, like an animated GIF on the website. Video could be a video. It's just, since we're able to do so many things, clients are starting to realize that, and they're leaning on us more heavily in other areas. So I'm seeing organic growth, right? I might get in the door with 3D or video, and then the client's like, oh, we see that you can also do these other three things. So that's really exciting. I'm pretty excited to be doing more web. It might get to the point where I probably need to hire like a web specialist, UI UX person, because that's not my forte. And I could certainly benefit from some more expertise.
You could almost learn from them as well during the whole journey too. So like even the process of hiring, you might learn a lot. I've actually seen a lot of websites not take advantage of proper just UX styles. What's the word I'm looking for? Proper UX kind of habits that a lot of these creators do, these developers are doing. And so it's interesting how that is a growing field. And if a website does not have a good UX, you can lose customers really quickly.
Yeah. And on that note, I had a web developer team build out the Polymath website, but over the past 2 years, I've gotten in there in the back end, and I've edited things. And I know that I've broken some stuff, right? I know that if I go on my website right now on a mobile device, there are weird line breaks with the text. Things need to be fixed. So yeah, for sure. I definitely could be learning more UI UX practices.
And something I resonate with you is the graphics design background. A lot of my creative has always been through a computer. So like I said, this writing earlier, but even just like branding stuff. So getting the color, kind of understanding color theory and all these different areas of graphics design that you need to know. And when I made my website, that's always kind of what I focused on was the visuals. But then I'm using Elementor, which is a WordPress page builder. And
Okay.
nice, and I've tried all the other ones, but for some reason I can't get my mobile site to look good. And or especially with the menu and stuff like that. Menus are so difficult, I tell you.
So my website, Polymath's website, is also WordPress. And I too wonder if I need to just pony up and hire, a big boy company, I guess, and do like some HTML5 or whatever the best practice is right now. Because I feel like WordPress is probably not recommended for big companies anymore. Because I'll work on website projects for some of my clients, and they're month-long projects. I mean, it's a lot of man hours, and it starts with a design agency. They come up with the visuals. They have a UI UX person designing everything in like Adobe XD or Sketch. And then we're handing it off to a developer who's, their whole job is to make it work, to make it look like the design, but be a working website. And then there's some back and forth, right? Like the developer is going to say, hey, we can't do this, or you need to consider this instead. And it's a good working relationship. But yeah, you're talking some big bucks there. A lot of time.
Choices to be made, I guess you could say.
Yeah. My little WordPress website is, I'm pretty happy with it. But it could be better.
Upgrade. Yeah. I don't think you have to upgrade though. Because WordPress runs what, a third of the internet, even on big company websites.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
So where do you think Polymath could help you with that kind of, those two different companies you're talking to and that kind of thing? Where do you think that can help you?
Yeah. So I have a little bit of knowledge. I would love to have more, because mainly you catch problems early on. If you can figure out that this is going to be a hiccup later on, or catch some little weird detail in a note or like direction and say, hey, this is actually wrong. We need to be doing this. You can save so much time and headache for your clients, and they love you for that. So it helps your own business, and it helps yourself if you can be that person that just notices, hey, you're going to run into this issue if you don't fix it now. So it could just be something weird. Like, for example, a website I just worked on, they wanted a carousel up top. Well, later they decided they wanted a video to be one of those carousel images. And I said, you need to make the carousel 1920 by 1080 or some 16 by 9 ratio, because you're going to end up cutting off some of the video either on the sides or the top and bottom. And they're like, no, we don't want to do that. The carousel is set. The dimensions are set. We don't want to change that. I thought, oh, okay, fine. So we kept moving forward. And eventually the web developer put the YouTube link of the video in place, and they saw it on the live website and they weren't happy with it. They said, oh, the video's getting cut off. Can we make it look better? How do we fix this? And I'm like, I tried to tell you. Yeah. So that's, I think, an instance of how being a polymath or, being polymathic would help. The more you know, the more streamlined you can make a process for your client.
Definitely. So going off onto something you mentioned earlier, how does it feel to be a dad and creating a family with your spouse?
Yeah, it's a game changer. I don't know. I can't speak highly enough of it. If anyone is interested in having kids, I really recommend doing it. It has made me a happier person. You give up some sleep, sure, and you give up some stress. Sometimes they drive you nuts. But I don't know, the level and depth of love that you start experiencing with your own children it's intense. And then, for me, not only am I a happier person, but I now have an even stronger motivator to make my business work. Mm-hmm. It's like we're doing okay. Yeah, we're doing fine. So I'm not really worried. But if we were ever to have like a bad year, it's not something you can just say like, oh, I don't feel like working today. You have to be that lion and wake up and go get food, right? Mm-hmm. Like your kids are hungry. You can't be lazy.
How's 2020 hitting you then?
2020's it's okay. I would say we're on track to have a normal year. We'll probably be fine. We did apply for the PPP loan, so I got enough money to cover payroll for 8 weeks, which is what it was intended for. So that helped. Certainly not, it's not the largest portion of income we've had. We've had projects. So I would say 2020 is going to be okay. I don't expect to see the growth I wanted to see. Ever since I started the business, we've had growth. I can't tell you the percentage. I don't know. I should, but we've grown every year. 2020, I think, is going to be a year where there's just going to be, the same as last year. Maybe a little worse, but.
Do you see any spark being the catalyst? Because the one thing I've been talking about with people is that depending on how bad the recession is going to be from this economic downturn of this virus, we're approaching, in my state, the end of the quarantine, but I think we're going to be hitting it again here soon. But a lot of times companies are either shutting down or experiencing hyper growth. Like Zoom, for example, is experiencing obviously a lot of growth because we're using it right now. And so do you see that might be do you see what path you might take?
It seems to be canceling each other out for me.
Okay.
I have gotten new work because of coronavirus, but I've also lost probably about an equal amount because of coronavirus. So yeah, I think there are opportunities here, and hopefully we just come out the other end even stronger, like you said. But currently, I think it's shaking out to be about even. Where I do see some growth potential is people have to start relying on remote workers more. I mean, it's almost a mandate because no one's going into the office anymore.
Yeah.
So where I would originally lose a job, like if I wanted to bid on a job out of state or maybe in LA or New York even, normally those places are so steeped in talent, they don't have to reach out to someone like me. They can just walk down the street and find some freelancer. Mm-hmm. But because everything's remote now, these places in New York and LA, they're calling me and they're saying, hey, we really like your work. Let's do something together. So yeah, that might be the spark. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm in talks with people. I'm having meetings with people, new clients, and I hope something happens and it just takes off like wildfire.
I was going to ask something like that. Do you think there's some kind of either that or some other kind of spark or catalyst that can give you exponential growth, give you hyper growth for your company?
Yes, I do. One of my close friends, he's a bit older than me, but he does pretty much the same thing. He has a client that we refer to as a whale, right? He's got one client. It's just huge. He does a lot of work for him. And I would say, a vast majority of his income comes from this one client. And I don't have that right now, which is both good and bad. It's good in the sense that my client base is diverse. So if one client walks away, I'm not destroyed, right? I could probably find someone else to replace them. But I would love to have that one big whale client. I don't have that yet. And if I get that person, I don't know who it is, I don't know who the company is, but if and when I land that big client, there's no stopping us. I'm going to be hiring left and right, and we're going to grow this thing. The goal is to do a 8 to 12 man studio. And I use man loosely because it could be women.
Yeah. People of anybody.
But,
But yeah.
Yeah, 8 to 12 people is the goal. I don't want to get any bigger than that. I've read some books, I've listened to podcasts, I've done my due diligence. It seems like anything over 12 becomes more of a headache than what it's worth.
For some reason, what you said there sparked this idea. It's the Phoenix Project, which is a project management novel that's been really talked about a lot. I don't know if you had a chance to read it or not, but it might actually be a good idea, especially when you're expanding, to kind of look at, because it helps with that project management cycle.
Yeah, the Phoenix Project?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know why that kind of came up, but I was like, okay, that serendipity is there for some reason. Let's take advantage of it.
Yeah. I need to get as much as I can. Are you familiar with Chris Do?
Sounds somewhat familiar. Doesn't he have a YouTube channel?
He has a YouTube channel, yes. So he owns and operates a studio in LA called Blind. But he also owns a company called The Future without an E. So it's F-U-T.
So I do know who he is. Okay.
Yeah. So, it's funny. Some people say he's selling snake oil. I actually really like him. I love his content. I love the way he thinks. I haven't done it yet, but I'm really tempted to just actually buy or, do one of his classes, like his business coaching classes, because I bet I would benefit from it.
Yeah.
But he seems like a really solid dude.
Sometimes you just got to invest in yourself. Actually, one of my guests on my show, Pete Sena, who was one of my most recent episode release, you might check out if you haven't seen it yet. But he has the various companies, and he talks about futurism and overall just creation. He has a similar kind of skill set as you, and I think that you might get along with him pretty well.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't watch that one. Pete Sena?
Sena, yeah.
Sena. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll go take a listen.
So oftentimes when you come to these creative, I guess you could say, endeavors, do you ever hit that kind of level of burnout or like a plateau? That's the word I was looking for. What do you get to do to get past that?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely burnout and plateaus, both creatively and just, from the business working into things, right? One of the things I have to be better about, and this has been a problem for me for years, I don't take vacations much. I might take 1 week a year, and I really need to be better about taking more. Now that we have kids, I'm hoping to be better with that. As they get older, I want to actually plan out, hey, we're going to go here, we're going to go here, whatever, and actually get away. That's the key. Because if I'm not away from the house and the computer, I'll still work. I'll find excuses to work. But
I understand that mentality.
Yeah, I just need to be better about taking vacations to avoid burnout. As far as plateaus go, I think how you get over those creatively, you just find a personal project that you're excited about, something you've been wanting to do for a while. I keep talking about car stuff, right? So I did a free project for a company in hopes of getting them as a client. It hasn't worked yet, but I did do a little fun 3D animation for them. And you just have to do that sometimes. You just have to, like you said, invest in yourself, take some time, actually treat it as a project, right? Like put it on your calendar, block a week or whatever it takes, but learn something new, whether it's Xparticles or some new plugin or something. Force yourself to learn something. And that usually does it.
You could do that almost 50 weeks a year too. So that's 50 new projects that you can learn a lot from, as well as make a network. So Gary Vee talks about collaborations kind of like that, and trying to find a client. If you want to be able to sell something to somebody and get to know somebody first, like he talks about DMing a whole bunch of people on Instagram and just keep going at it and making actual contextual messages to those people, and then offering value like you're saying too. So it'll be interesting how that might go.
That's it. I have not thought to do that on Instagram, but I do that like with LinkedIn, or if I can just find email addresses. But I will like just set a goal, right, and say, I'm going to email 20 people today, or LinkedIn message 20 people today. And you probably won't get a response from any of them, but every now and then you'll get one person that's like, hey, this sounds interesting. Let's talk.
Right.
And it's worth it.
So when you were talking about being an entrepreneur, do you see any difficulties in your life and your experience that have blocked you?
Yeah, I think there are some challenges to being a creative business that perhaps other businesses don't struggle with, or maybe not as much anyway. And one of those, the worst offender, is scope creep. Are you familiar with that term? Have you ever heard?
Somewhat.
Okay, yeah. So in the creative industry, what's gonna happen almost every project, you're gonna say, hey, client X, I'm gonna do A, B, and C for you for this amount of money. And in the middle of the project, they're going to come back and say like, oh, we also need, X, Y, and Z. So when they ask for X, you're like, okay, I'll just throw that in because you're a good client and there's enough budget to cover it. Well, then they ask for Y, and then it's like, okay, now, our profit margin's going away. And then they ask for Z, and you're just not making any money at all, right? You're actually losing money. You would have been better off just turning the project down outright. So that's scope creep. And I always liken it to, I spoke earlier about like going into like your local Valvoline or like some tire shop, right? You can't just go to Walmart or somewhere and say, hey, I want to pay for an oil change, but while you're under my car, can you give me a free brake job? Like that just doesn't happen. You can't do that. But it happens in the creative field because clients don't either value your time, or they're just, usually it's not malicious. They're just ignorant of what it takes to do your job.
Right.
So you as a creative professional, especially a business owner, you have to try to anticipate this stuff. And the second the question is asked, you have to say, hey, I'm happy to do this for you. It'll be great. I'm sure it'll look amazing. It's a good addition. It's just going to cost this much more. If you can catch it early on, and again, be positive about it, be upbeat. Don't be like, oh God, I hate this client. Yeah, we can do that, I guess, for this much money. Like, don't ever say it like that. You have to be positive about it and be like, oh yeah, I'm happy to do this. Here's what it's going to cost. You just have to get really skillful at doing that, and as early as possible, because clients hate surprises.
Yeah.
I mean, if I estimated a job for say $10,000, and then they asked for additional things through the course of the project, and I end up sending them a bill for $15,000, they are going to be ticked off big time. So you have to tell them.
Yeah, communicate.
You have to communicate. Communication's huge. And ideally, you would have a signed off contract, like a statement of work, before you even pick up a pencil. Most of the time, and maybe this is some advice that'll help your audience. Most of the time you want a statement of work that says, I'm going to do this, this, and this, either have a total cost at the bottom, or you can line item it out. It's up to you. But then you have like a boilerplate sort of like generic legalese thing at the bottom that says, this estimate is only for line items above. Anything performed above and beyond this is going to be billed in addition to, I'm telling you, like right at the front end, tell them this is what you're getting for this much money. Anything more is going to cost extra. If you can do that and get their signature right off the bat, you're all going to be protected. You're going to be happy. There are no surprises. And that really speaks volumes of who you are as a professional. Because a lot of freelancers, younger freelancers entering the field, including myself when I was one, I didn't do that. I didn't do contracts. I just said, it's going to cost you this much money. Let's do it. And I ended up getting burned a few times.
Yeah. Well, and Ronny, it seems like it comes down to your fairness principle as well. And you're being fair to yourself, and also just knowing what you're worth. And I think a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs have a hard time with knowing what you're worth.
Yeah, I think there's this guilty thing that happens with artists. They feel guilty charging money. I don't know why. I mean, it happens to me too. We shouldn't feel guilty charging for our time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it. I think everyone talks about it too. Chris Do, I'm sure, has a video out there about it. But yes, your time is valuable. Everyone out there listening, your time is valuable. Make sure you get covered for every work that you do. Don't work for free.
And this is kind of a skill set of knowing kind of the taxes and legalese and legal aspects of business ownership as well. And it comes back to that idea of the entrepreneurial polymath in a way that we kind of alluded to earlier. And it seems that entrepreneur is almost like a modern polymath where you have to be kind of a jack of all trades and know many areas very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think becoming a business owner has forced me to become a better person. One, I'm just more knowledgeable now in how our society works, right? What are the rules and laws, and how is the game actually played? And being a business owner, you're forced to learn it.
Hmm.
And I think that makes you a better person. Because if I were to say sell my company or just quit doing it and I became an employee again for someone, I'm now going to be more understanding of what my role is as an employee, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, maybe I can clock out at 5 o'clock and not just care anymore, right? Like someone else is going to be handling the books, payroll, taxes, withholding, all this stuff. I don't have to worry about it. And maybe that does have a value. Maybe I'm willing to make less to take the stress off of my shoulders. I don't know, but being that business owner forces you to know more, learn more, and just be a more rounded person at the end of the day.
Definitely. And kind of what you alluded to there, Ronnie, is the burnout aspect too, knowing how much you can handle. And I think a lot of people burn out because they can't take breaks. They can't do that kind of thing. I was actually talking with Sean Shepard on the podcast recently, and he was talking about how entrepreneurs are known as like the crazy ones in French because they have to deal with all the ups and downs of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be horrible, right? Some clients pay net 90. There's a big client in town. I won't name names, but they're like net 180. I mean, you're talking like 6 months, right?
Mm,
So you have to have a bank account that can float you months at a time until that paycheck comes in.
mm-hmm.
So if you're an employee and you're used to getting paid every 2 weeks, you jump into the world of freelance. You might work a month on a project, and then that client might be net 60. So you don't get paid until 60 days after that. So you're talking about a 3-month window of
Mm-hmm.
no income.
Wow. Yeah. That's
And you
crazy.
have to just be ready to weather that storm.
Definitely. Now, sort of wrapping up, and so to speak, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so this is another area I could be a better polymath, but we are mainly on LinkedIn and Instagram. Very rarely am I on Facebook and Twitter. Could definitely be better there, but I focus mostly on Instagram because we are a visual company. It seems to be the platform where I can get most of the visuals out, and I'm using Hootsuite. So usually I come up with a post and it kind of goes out to all platforms. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter even, and LinkedIn.
Mhm. Okay. And then separate from this, obviously checking out the awesome brand of Polymath and checking you out online, what can people do as a call to action, the audience today?
Yeah, so I mean, come check us out. I would love to get some more traffic to the website. There's a way to contact us on there. If you like our work, send us any leads you can think of. If you're a business owner out there and you can benefit from some beautiful imagery, we would love to make it for you. Or maybe you just know someone, right? We work with small and large companies. It doesn't matter. It would be great just to have a few more leads.
Yeah, definitely. And then what could be a creative call to action for the audience? Like something they can do.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're interested, maybe you're a 3D artist out there listening, or if you maybe just an artist in general or a video person, reach out to me because I use contractors all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and finding reliable people seems to be the challenge. So if you're a reliable person out there and you're looking for work, hit me up. Let me know. Maybe we can both benefit here.
So this is Ronnie Young from Polymath Visuals, and I'm Dustin Miller on the Polymath Podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Dustin. I appreciate it.
Definitely.